Hello and welcome into the Dynasty After Party brought to you by Club Fantasy. As always, I am Michael Sicoli, joined here by Joel Wirth. No Andrew this week. We may have him periodically over the summer, here and there. Either way, you got us too. So how are you doing today, Joel?
Awesome, good. How are you?
I'm swell. Although one thing went wrong, and our astute viewers may notice the difference. Joel, you didn't mention it, so maybe you don't look at me, but different glasses, and that's because of a funny story of last night where I fell asleep on said glasses. So
Don't.
those that clear pair, that's a little bit shot, a little bit shot. So we're rocking the black pair today.
Looks good. Looks
Um,
good.
yeah, I hope so. I hope so. I don't know how I feel about it, but I appreciate it. Either way, we got a great dynasty show for you today. Everyone, we are talking about our look inside the series that Club Fantasy has kickstarted this week. It's breaking down every team in the NFL, grabbing a player and talking a little bit more about it. We're going to be doing that from a dynasty angle and more so looking at the teams as a whole. So, if let's go. This week we're going to be talking about the Carolina Panthers, the Houston Texans, and oh my goodness, I'm blanking on the last one,
Cardinals.
and the Cardinals, of course, the Arizona Cardinals, one of the biggest sources of news this week that we're going to talk about a little bit as well about DeAndre Hopkins being released. So much to jump into, but first, just quickly make sure you are following us. Follow Club Fantasy on Twitter at Club Fantasy FFL, and you can follow myself at Michael__Scully, and you can follow Joel here at the Joel Wirth. So let's jump right into it. I mentioned it before. Let's talk about it now. DeAndre Hopkins has been released from the Arizona Cardinals. He is free to sign with any team of his choosing. He will want his money, of course, which might restrict some of it. But I think everyone was somewhat surprised. We thought he would be on a different team. We thought it would be via trade, but no suitors. DeAndre Hopkins is a free agent. Where do you think he's going to end up? What are you talking about in terms of a dynasty fallout?
Yeah, I was pretty stunned that he was released. I figured it would be a tough trade to pull off, but just outright releasing him and getting nothing in return.
Tough.
Uh, yeah, very. I mean, I guess you got to do what you got to do, salary cap wise. Um, I think, there's all this talk about him going on Brandon Marshall's podcast and saying what quarterbacks he wants to play with and all like he's on the wrong side of 30, right? This is his last opportunity to get a cash out. So I ultimately think he's going to end up where the money is. I don't think that's Kansas City. I don't think that's Buffalo. Unfortunately, I don't think that's Green Bay from a personal standpoint. So I know you talked about where you think he's going to go. I think he's going to go to Carolina because he's from South Carolina. Played at Clemson. He's spent basically his entire career in the Deep South and playing in domes. So would think he would probably want to stay in a temperate climate area. They've got cap space. They've got $27 million under the cap right now, and they just traded for the number one pick in the draft to get a quarterback, and they don't have an elite wide receiver for him to throw to. So I think it's a really good spot for him. He's kind of restricted. He should be, kind of a Keenan Allen, Chris Godwin kind of. I don't know, big slot's the term, but not small slot kind of player.
I'll call it big
And they
slot.
don't really
We'll
have that.
take big slot.
Yeah, not necessarily small slot. They don't really have that kind of player. They signed Adam Thielen, but didn't really give him any real money. And he's there's not much left in that spool of thread right there. So I think that's a good spot for him. I know you've got a different spot.
I do, and just to touch on the Carolina spot, I think you bring up a great point that we don't always think about is that climate bit of he has always been in the South. That's just historically speaking, there is a real life impact where you move and live for a year plus. So
Right.
I think that's always a little bit forgotten about where people actually want to go. But yeah, if he wants the money, Carolina is the team that could give it to him. Support their starting quarterback in Andy Dalton. And we'll move on from my take. I think it's Baltimore. And a lot of people don't like this. A lot of people don't see it. But I'm going to put some stock into the quarterbacks he said he wanted to play with because there's no reason for him to really be playing games at this point, short of making a market for himself. But I think he will. I think he has that. So he wants to play with Lamar Jackson. The Ravens have every single reason to be giving Lamar Jackson weapons so he can sit back and pass instead of run. And they've already made a sign of doing that type of change this offseason by giving Odell Beckham Jr. a lot of money for a year. Give him up to $18 million in incentives. They have Mark Andrews. They have Rashad Bateman. They spent a first-round pick on a wide receiver. So I think it makes sense. If DeAndre Hopkins is there, Rashad Bateman seems incredibly out of the picture of this front office for some reason. I mean, he hasn't spoken very kindly about the own team in recent weeks. He just seems disgruntled. The team doesn't seem happy with him, and to me, that means that he's expendable. And DeAndre Hopkins is the type of guy that can put the Ravens over the top. So if he's willing to take, 15 million over, like maybe 2 years, 30 million, if he was willing to take that type of money, probably would need more, probably would need that 2-year 40. But I think that would be a very interesting spot. And wherever he goes, he's going to command a tremendous target share. I think that's also what I really want to stress for these everyone pointing out landing spots for DeAndre Hopkins, is that wherever he goes, he's going to be DeAndre Hopkins, and he creates his own pie because he has not lost a step. He was still very, very good last year, just dealt with some injury issues. So if he's healthy, he's going to be great. Yeah, suspension. Yes, yeah, that too.
Yeah, but he did have some. I think he missed a couple of games because of injury as well over the last couple of years. So, it's not like he's doing the Devontae Adams cruise into age 30 with no fall off whatsoever. But yeah, I think he's definitely a buy. I'm gotten some pretty lousy D-Hop trade offers that we'll kind of go over in a little bit. But I think he's someone I want to invest in at this point.
Yeah, so let's quickly talk about a price point for DeAndre Hopkins then. Would you send your contender, because I think the only people buying DeAndre Hopkins should be contenders. Would you send your contending late first for DeAndre Hopkins?
If I knew it was a late first, yeah. I mean,
assuming you're going to be one of those final 4 teams because you're making that move for DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah, that's a move I would prefer to make that move later in the season, but with that, with this news, you may not be able to make that move. So you may not be able to wait to make that move. So yeah, I would be okay with that. If I was, pretty sure I was going to be a legitimate contender and thought this was a missing piece, I would definitely thought that pick was going to be late. Then yeah, definitely.
That's where I think his value would be, because if I had DeAndre Hopkins and I'm not a total contender, I'm somewhat middle of the road, I would be happy to get a first round pick for an older type of prospect like that. But I think that's a great point in terms of someone of a price point to buy him at. Quick, this or that, Chris Godwin, DeAndre Hopkins, who would you rather have?
Godwin.
Okay. Just wondering. I don't know why that name popped in my head, but younger, a little bit more up in the air.
Yeah, with what's going on. 3 years younger. I'm
3 years
not
younger.
Terribly worried about Baker Mayfield costing him targets. I mean, that's the kind of guy that Baker Mayfield's going to target heavily anyway, so I'm not too worried about that.
I'm a little bit worried about what it could mean in terms of the value of the targets, in terms of maybe like a
True.
Listen, Baker Mayfield was averaging, I think, 180 passing yards a game, which I only know because I was looking that up, and it's like second worst among all qualifiers, but we'll see. And either way, yeah, this is not a part about Chris Godwin. That is for another show. Let's get into the look inside. Again, I mentioned this. All articles about these teams are already on the Club Fantasy website. Be sure to check that out. And we'll start with a little homer right now, because I kicked off the series with a piece about the Carolina Panthers and its new shiny free agent running back Miles Sanders. So the Panthers gave a boatload of money to Miles Sanders, formerly of the Philadelphia Eagles, and that is a interesting situation, because you look at what Miles Sanders did last year, and it's such a difference maker from where he was the year before. 11 touchdowns after having 0 the year prior, and basically around 8 or 5 or something like that total in the 2 years combined prior to that. So he doubled his career output in 1 year on the touchdown side, just thanks to the Eagles really being a high-scoring team. And now he goes to Carolina, a team that probably will not be a high-scoring team, but he will still have a huge piece of the puzzle. I'm curious. I obviously have put my thoughts out there in the article, again, at clubfantasyffl.com or .org. But either way, yeah, thank you. And I'm curious on your takes then on Miles Sanders.
I'm a little nervous. So there's a couple things
Fair.
that make me think that the team aspect is going to hurt him a little bit. Number one, you talked about the Eagles being a high-scoring offense. We don't know if Carolina can do that. They were also a front-running offense, right? There were a lot of games where they had huge leads and they just sat on the ball and milk clock in the second half. And he was the beneficiary of a lot of that. You will have, I think there was definitely a scenario or situation where Jalen Hurts vultured a lot of his touchdowns, so that should come back to him. But I think the team concept really kind of warps him down a little bit, just because of, like I said, they had so many leads, big leads in the second half, and they were just able to sit on the ball and run the ball quite a bit. You're also going from a situation where Philly had like the easiest schedule in the league last year to Carolina's not going to have a murderous schedule, but there's going to be a bit of an upgrade. The division is obviously very soft. Not a lot of elite defenses in that division at all. We'll see what happens with Atlanta. They made some free agent acquisitions.
David Onyemata on the defensive line. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a team that could contend for that. Certainly, they expect should contend for that division. I think on a positive side, they brought in Deuce Staley to be the running back coach, and he's very good coach. Obviously, I'm not real huge on Frank Reich as a head coach, but he did an excellent job of bringing in talented coaching around him. Ejiro Evero on the defensive side, Deuce Staley. So, I don't expect him to replicate what he did last year, but I still expect him to be pretty good. If Deonta Foreman was still there, I'd be kind of tempered in my expectations, but Chuba Hubbard's nothing, so I don't think he has any real competition for touches there either.
Yeah, and they haven't didn't draft anyone of note. It is literally just Miles Sanders and Chuba Hubbard, and that's where kind of the rub is, where Miles Sanders finally became a bell cow last year, and that's really what we always love in our fantasy leagues, are the guys that get all those touches. And Sanders saw 35% of his career rushes in 2022. It was the 8th most carries in the NFL. So he never finished inside the top 20 in that carry position prior, and that's partially also due to him not being 100% healthy over the 3 years prior as well. So he finally got the workload, and he did a great job with it. He's always been efficient, but you factor in these few things. He's not a good receiver. He's a horrible pass blocker. And when you have those things, all of a sudden you look at the touchdowns, and if the team's not going to score, what does that mean? And that's really what I broke down in the article was we'll see what happens on the touchdowns. He's not going to catch the ball. And he still only finished as around the RB15 last year in PPR leagues because of how little his receiving production was. So if we're talking about somebody who had a career year and still was only the RB15, being drafted in the RB17, probably will end up being that RB19 type of guy. What is the ceiling here? Are we drafting him too close to his ceiling? Because that's kind of where I feel like we're drafting him where he's going to finish more or less. And if he gets hurt, which he has in the past, we're talking about somebody that's going to blow up, your roster in a way. And you're spending that. He is going to be the perfect example of a RB dead zone type of guy in redraft formats. And for Dynasty, with running backs, we really only care about 1-year samples.
Yeah, and I think the guys on No Pun Intended discussed him on Wednesday, and they brought up, would you rather Aaron Jones or Miles Sanders? And I think all of them took Sanders. I would take Aaron Jones. I would as well. Aaron Jones is maybe a year and a half, maybe 2 years older. Even in Dynasty, I would still prefer Aaron Jones by quite a bit over Miles Sanders.
Interesting. Okay, so you're gonna, when we get to the Packers, I think I know who you want to say bye to, but I am excited for us to get to the Packers because of obviously your connection there. But any other Panthers that we want to talk about as buys or sells? I feel like the rookies and Jonathan Mingo and Bryce Young, it's kind of hard to buy those guys after they're being drafted. But Adam Thielen is there. Terrace Marshall is, some people tout him as a buy low. Not me. I'm not one of those people. But you got Hayden Hurst at tight end. Chuba Hubbard, if you think Miles Sanders is not that guy, which I do think Miles Sanders will be the guy. But any other names in Carolina you want to throw out there?
I am a Terrace Marshall longtime fan and supporter. So
that's a shame.
It is. I've probably got him on way too many rosters. But yeah, I think he's got a chance. I think he was a really good prospect coming out of LSU. Matt Rule never seemed to want to give him the chance. They had Joe Brady there, and just, I don't know what happened. They fired the wrong coach, obviously, but I think he's got a chance. I think he's the best receiver on that roster, right? Assuming that DJ Chark is still coming back from. They said he's just had ankle surgery again, and he's still not 100%.
Shy Smith is actually
Shy Smith.
Yeah, Shy Smith is actually the best player on that roster. But go on. I like Shy Smith.
So yeah, I think Terrace Marshall's got a chance. He's not someone I'm actively going out to try and buy anymore, because the time to buy him was last year, and I did. So he's on a lot of my rosters where I could have gotten him cheap. So I think he's got a chance. Adam Thielen's dead. Like I said, I'm worried about Chark with the ankle surgery in the offseason. He's really never been able to stay healthy outside of that first year he had in Jacksonville. There's really not a whole lot. I kind of like Bryce Young just because there's kind of uncertainty about his size. But that pick in Superflex is,
it's a valuable pick that people made to
get. Nobody's selling low on that pick. So
yeah, that's why I was saying, those guys that were drafted, the guy who drafted Jonathan Mingo and the guy who drafted Bryce Young took them very high.
Right.
Chances are. So the odds of buying them are slim, and if you bought them, there's no reason to sell already. I'm not against throwing a fourth out there for Adam Thielen, which I honestly think would be more or less the cost. Just on the flyer that maybe he's not totally done. They gave him some money. He is by far the most proven person in that receiving room. So we know he'll start. There's no world he's sitting. So I have some interest there, but not much because chances are he is dust. So let's talk about another team that, we talked about a little bit low there of other names we're not interested in. Who cares about Carolina? Let's go to a more winning team in the Houston Texans. So that's sarcasm as much as I could float it. So Josh Hudson, our own Josh, wrote about it for the website. Again, check out all the articles at clubfantasyffl.com. Dameon Pierce was the target, and this is somebody that I was wrong about mostly last year. I was very out on Dameon Pierce in terms of people talking about him having, the next best thing. And I didn't think he was going to be that. And he was somewhat in the middle of that. He was great, but I worried about the ceiling. The ceiling still wasn't totally there. And now he survived the draft. My guy Tyler Algier can't survive the draft, but Dameon Pierce gets to, and I'm whatever. Only person there is Devin Singletary. Josh is very high on Dameon Pierce, who's currently going off the board in that middling. I believe it's back-to-back with Miles Sanders right now in Dynasty drafts. Where are you at with Dameon Pierce?
He's a guy.
That's where I'm at too.
Yeah, I liked him as a prospect. I thought he was really kind of underrated. He went to a good spot, and he did kind of, exactly what you would. His ceiling or his season was kind of best case scenario for a guy who was picked in that range. Would have had 1,000 yards if he would have stayed healthy. I think he would have like 13 games, 12 games, 13 games, something like that. So yeah, at the 1,000-yard season, had 5 touchdowns, probably would have broken 6, 7. I think the plus case for him is, what does this offense look like with an actual quarterback, right? Davis Mills is terrible. So what is CJ Stroud coming in and running a functional offense look like? And does that give him some opening that maybe he didn't have? Because, they really had. Brandon Cooks was their best player last year, best player on the team last year, but he really wasn't getting any volume. He wasn't getting any targets. No. Whether that was a function of the quarterback or just the offense imploding on itself. So now, what happens when you've got maybe a functional offense with a functional quarterback, then to maybe open things up for Pierce a little bit.
And it's all very different this year for the Houston Texans. Like you said, new signal caller, Brandon Cooks, who you just mentioned, who even like you said, best player, still had a down year last year by his standards. He's gone. He's now in Dallas. And will we see an improvement? Just because I think we have a better quarterback, I don't know if we're going to see a better play. I think Houston could very well be in an interesting, could be, proud owners of that number 1 spot for, good old Caleb. But
which they traded away.
And that would be a very, very good deal looking back on it for the Cardinals. Yeah, right. So either way, that's for our next team. But if we're not going to see, do we see that improvement? Because you look at those weapons, you don't even have Jordan Akins at tight end anymore. You got nothing supplying that position. You have John Mechie, who still isn't totally healthy and is now dealing with another injury, and I hope he makes it back to what he was as a prospect, but we'll see. Nico Collins, who I personally like, but has never totally put it together in the years. Maybe that's Houston. Maybe that's something else. We have a new head coach coming in, of a defensive-minded head coach. What are we getting out of the Houston Texans? I think there is such a wide range of outcomes, especially in the AFC South, because of how wide open that division is. We expect the Jaguars to be good. We think the Titans might be semi-capable. The Colts are a total wild card. And the Texans have a bright future. But what does that mean for this year? And Dameon Pierce really, I just don't know. And the big reason I was down on him last year was because I didn't know if he could handle that workload. And he got hurt last year. He split his workload in college. He came out. He wasn't a good pass catcher. I don't think he's a great pass catcher. And he didn't really do that his first year either. So does Stroud change that? I don't know. And that's why I'm kind of, if I was going to take someone in the dead zone, it would probably be Dameon Pierce, but I'm still mostly out on him at cost. If I'm paying mid RB2 prices for a guy that is still a day 3 guy who could easily be replaced next year when the Texans view themselves as more contenders, it's a tough ask for me. He seems like a 1-year guy for me.
Yeah, I think in Dynasty, he's not super highly valued. So I think if you want to get in, you can get in at a decent price, right? There's, probably even though he kind of proved himself, I think you can probably even get in cheaper than you could have last year, just because.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
everybody's kind of like I think a lot of people are on your page where they expect him to get replaced at any given time, right? And there's some people who think Devin Singletary is a better player, which I vehemently disagree with. But so I think you can buy him at a fairly reasonable price if you want that. He is what he is, right? He's a limited ceiling player. He's a capable starter, but he's not anyone who's going to carry you in any way. So he's a starter. So if you can get him at a good price, I don't think I would trade for him straight up. If I could get him in a deal and I need a running back, I'm cool with that. But yeah, he's not someone I'm going to go out and target either.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind him as my RB2. And ultimately, like I just said before, I don't want to contradict myself. If I can get a good RB for a year, I'm getting value out of that trade, even if he gets replaced next year. And that could very well happen. But if it gets me to a ring this year,
we talked about them giving away that draft capital. Are they going to be, if he replicates his year that he had last year, this year, can they afford to spend a draft pick on a high, on a running back that you would expect to take his job? And
maybe they signed Saquon Barkley.
That's possible.
Let's just make something up here and let's just go crazy with it. But here, quick this or that. We just talked about him: Miles Sanders or Dameon Pierce for Dynasty. They're guys that are going right next to each other and stuff.
Yeah, man, that's tough. I guess I would say Sanders just because I think he's got more ceiling than Pierce does. But they're close. They're really, that's a coin flip.
Yeah, it's close to a coin flip for me as well. I'd probably take Sanders because I think he's a better player. In terms of, we're talking about two guys we have one guy with 1 year of efficiency and no pass catching, and I got a guy with 4 years of efficiency and no pass catching. So I'll just take the guy that did that plus a little $25 million in the back pocket. Houston has a lot of other pieces. We touched on it before with a hodgepodge of a receiving room. Any other guys in Houston that you're buying or selling?
I think Houston's almost the exact same thing as Carolina, right? I like the quarterback, but you're not going to get him at a reasonable price.
He was just drafted. Yep.
You're paying the 103 price for him, 103, 104 price for him. So, there's really not a whole lot I'm targeting on that team.
See, it's a throw-in piece, but I do want Nico Collins on the end of my benches. I do. I can't seem to quit him. And he drew targets at the end of last year. He's struggled with staying healthy, but when he is healthy, he has commanded a healthy target share of that offense. And he was their leading receiver, even when Brandon Cooks was healthy at the end of last year, in terms of targets. And when Brandon Cooks missed, he stepped up even a little bit more. So we'll see. I don't have huge expectations, but I do kind of want to take a dart throw with where CJ Stroud's going to be looking. If I am, I'm getting Nico Collins as a throw-in most leagues where I can, take him at the end of my startup, something like that. But ultimately, it's going to be a low-scoring team. Rookies will have growing pains, both with Carolina and Houston. So, yeah, and I don't think either of us are buying Devin Singletary. I do like Devin
No,
Singletary. I do kind of
not
think
in this offense. I
I think,
like Devin Singletary in
yeah,
Buffalo's
I
offense
think
better than
he's
Houston's
quietly a
offense.
good player. There's it's a handcuff I'm not even happy to have around me. So maybe next year when he becomes the starting running back for the Giants. But that's I'm just making stuff up at this point. Let's go to our third team here, the Desert. Still down south, Arizona, the Cardinals. So we talked about at the top of the show, DeAndre Hopkins is now gone. They cut him. And if anybody was wondering why they ate all that money, all 22 or $24 million instead of waiting 5 days to push it, it's because the Cardinals simply don't care about this year. They are currently the odds favorite to be the number one, the worst team in the NFL, own the number one overall pick next year. So fantasy wise, ironically, this is the most productive of all three teams that I think we're talking about today. I think this is the team that I'm most excited about, despite an injury to the quarterback, despite everything going on. Where are you at with the Arizona Cardinals? I know Kelly Singh wrote about Marquise Brown and her takes on that. Definitely an article you should check out as well. Again, clubfantasyffl.com. But Arizona Cardinals, who are you looking at, or what are your thoughts on Marquise Brown? Let's start off with that.
I like him. It just depends on what that quarterback situation is going to be, because Colt McCoy is, if he's starting half the year,
proven
that's
veteran. Colt
that's
McCoy.
a problem. Yeah, Colt McCoy's got Mike White disease, and that he's good for one game when you don't expect him, and then once the opposition gets film on him, he's trash. So,
yeah,
if he's got to play for half the season, that's a very bad thing for the rest of that team. And I like the skill players on this team. If Kyler Murray was healthy, I would feel really good about it. I kind of thought that was a sneaky. Everybody was.
Apologize.
It's all good. Everybody was expecting them to just be the default number one pick, and that team's got a lot of skill position players, right? They had D-Hop. They've got Marquise Brown. They've got James Conner, who can't stay healthy, but is a very good player when he's in there. I kind of like Trey McBride as a sneaky tight end sleeper. I liked Michael Wilson as a prospect. He couldn't stay healthy at Stanford, but he's a very good player as well. So, but now that you take D-Hop off that team, it's obvious that they're not looking at contending this year. I do like Marquise Brown. He produced last year during D-Hop suspension.
Yep.
So I expect him to be number one target with a bullet there. It all goes back to how functional is that offense for however many games Colt McCoy starts.
I love Marquise Brown, and I think the narrative around him would be so much different if he didn't get hurt when D-Up returned, because this is somebody that was a high-end wide receiver 1 while D-Up was gone. I believe he was the wide receiver 5 in most formats. He was excellent. He was steady. He was great. He may not have had the 30-point blow-up game you might want, but he was a steady 10 to 20 points every single week, and he was the clear one of that offense. Hello, Mr. Scamper. It's always good to see you in the comments. But I really do like what Marquise Brown is, and I think when you talk about quarterback and quarterback play, what are we getting out of it? What we want guys that command targets, and Marquise Brown did it last year with middling play. Kyler wasn't good last year. Let's also factor that in, and he still got it done because alphas command targets, and I think bad quarterbacks can still get good players the ball when they are that good. I think Marquise Brown is a genuinely talented player. D-Hop is not coming back from suspension this time. He is long gone. I'm not a big Michael Wilson guy personally, and we'll see if he even makes it to week 1 healthy, but that's another topic for another day, so I'm not exactly in on that boat. But there's no one else there. It just feels like somebody that's going to be peppered with targets with a touch of tight end mix of Trey McBride and Zach Ertz. But I do think Marquise Brown is going to contend with 140 targets, and those guys, you can get them easily as your wide receiver 3 in drafts at least, and I'm all about it. I already bought him a month ago in Dynasty. I love the discount I'm getting just because he didn't get to continue from that wide receiver 5 start. And you better believe he would have been great with Hopkins if he was able to build on that on the side. But
The
we had
shame is we really never got to see Hopkins and Hollywood and
it's
Kyler in the lineup at the same time to see what that could have been.
I was so upset about that at the end of last year as well, because that I really believe that would have been a really good team. But also Cliff Kingsbury is just absolutely inept.
Yeah.
So you had that working against them too. And you have an offensive scheme coming in differently. Again, a defensive-minded head coach stepping in with Jonathan Gannon. And they brought over I'll look up who's just the new offensive coordinator in Arizona, but
I don't even know. But I mean, it really can't be worse than Kingsbury, right? He was terrible. So
it can't be. It cannot be. Although there was a very pass-first offense. So the offensive coordinator is Drew Petzing. It's his 10th year in the NFL. He spent the last 3 years as the quarterback coach of the Cleveland Browns. That's an interesting hire coming out off how bad the Browns were last year, kind of offensively, but very difficult circumstances there that I'm sure we'll talk about when we do the look inside for the Cleveland Browns. But for now,
if you look at it, he did a good job with Jacoby Brissett last year. So, and I thought that would have been a good landing spot for him to go get half a year to run
reunite,
that show before
do it over again.
Came back. Yeah,
do it all over again. Get half a year and then that. But I did also see.
McCoy.
Yeah, it would be better than Colt McCoy. And I will also see. I did see this on Twitter. Again, I encourage everyone to follow him. Jeff Mueller, I believe he's DLF's doctor on Twitter. He's a physical therapist. He talks about injuries. He does an amazing job with analysis of return dates. And he, along with a few other accounts I've seen, people are writing off Kyler for the season, and that's not the case of what's going to happen. I'm seeing return dates as soon as week 6, possibly. Just guys that can come back. And maybe it's Kyler's not going to be the best running quarterback that he was. It might take time to get back to where he could be. But if he's throwing the ball, it'll be better than Colt McCoy, and it'll be getting the ball to Marquise Brown. So Kyler Murray seems to be a buy. People are talking about Kyler Murray as a buy in Superflex all over Twitter. He's going for mid-2022 first right now, straight up. Where are you at with Kyler Murray?
I kind of agree with that. I think, when Joe Burrow tore his ACL, it was kind of in the same time of the season, and he was back for week 1 the next year.
That's the exact circumstance. That's the exact example that was being brought up.
Different players, but I kind of think this. I really think this is a good thing for him long term, right? I think this lets him. He's a very good thrower of the football, and I think this. Obviously, he's not going to be able to run around and do the things he normally would with the first year back from the ACL. So I think this will let him focus on that, and I think he's good at that, and I think he needs to realize that. So I think this is going to be good for him long term. If I can buy him for a mid first, I'm all over that. I haven't seen that in any of my leagues, but that would be good. I'm actively trying to buy Kyler wherever I can.
That's where I would be as well. It seems to me in my leagues nobody's doing that, but I have seen that on Twitter being floated around. Now I want to talk about the guy that I want to be buying in Arizona, James Conner. James Conner is the perennial guy that just keeps on being. He's the new Frank Gore in a way. I'm just going to come out and say that. Maybe that's too kind, but we're talking about somebody that is always going to be underdrafted and will always keep performing. And that's all he's done for the last few years. I'm pulling up the numbers right now. He's the RB5 in 2021. He was the RB19 in last year, despite missing 4 games. So, yeah, he might miss 4 games, but he's going to be a borderline RB1 on points per game. And when you're taking that guy as your RB3, your RB4, even just because of that injury risk, you ride it out. You get those points because he's going to get so much work on the ground. He gets so much dump downs. He's not a bad receiver. So he gets so much volume. He gets all that volume. That's when you're talking about where he's going in drafts, especially in dynasty leagues where he's going around that RB 30 to 40 range. I love it. I love it so much for a contender. You can have him for a late second without a doubt.
Yeah, he's a guy who I think everyone or most people just expect to get hurt, and he's going to get hurt. But if you plan for that, if you just don't assume that he's going to give you 17 games. If you say, he's in a rotation with my with my RB2s, and I can, when he's in there, I'm going to play him. And when he's not, I have, backup for him. He's ideal, right? Because he's going to get a ton. It's another situation where they didn't bring in any competition for him. It's Keontae Ingram and nothing. Keontae Ingram did nothing last year.
Yep.
So yeah, he's going to be the RB1 with a bullet. He's going to get as many touches as he can handle. He's going to get a ton of dump offs. We saw that last year after Kyler went down. He was their offense. So yeah, if you can buy him at, basically, if you can buy him late second, I'm all about that. If you can, there's some places you can get him for the equivalent of a third. I love that as well. He's a guy I want to make trades and make it look like he's the throw in, but I don't want to make exactly. I want to buy him. I'll make it kind of a 1-for-1 swap somewhere else and get him thrown in, and
just it's good to just buy. Yeah, it's good to buy talented players. Yeah, and right. When you're doing that, and somebody that has been a very good guy for fantasy, I want to do that with James Conner, and I want to win a ring with him. And guys like him are why I build my dynasty rosters wide receiver first, is because I get my wide receivers, and then I'll send a third for RB2 production. Maybe he misses, maybe he misses 3 games, and I plug in something, and I have a bit of a drop there, but my star wide receivers make up for it. And while he's healthy, I combine all of that into a much better performance. I have a better tight end. I have a better quarterback. I have great wide receivers. Maybe my RB1 and RB2 aren't great, but I'm going to have good ones on points per game because I get a discount on the injuries. So James Conner is just somebody that I'll talk about almost every year as a good dynasty buy, and we'll see what happens next year. But for now, he is the offense. It's him and Marquise Brown. And if DeAndre Hopkins leaving helps anyone, it's funnel more targets to James Conner, who has a genuine, real chance to be the second leading receiver on this team. I would not be surprised.
I wouldn't,
at least in terms of receptions. So
I wouldn't be surprised if he leads the team in receptions.
Oh, let's not do that to Hollywood. Come on. Come on. Hollywood's going 100 and 1,200 this year.
I mean, I like Hollywood a lot too, but he's not a super high efficiency target guy.
Yeah, right? Yeah. I know it's not his game. But
right, exactly. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Conner leads the team in receptions.
Yeah, Hollywood could realistically have 55 and 900, and James Conner could have 70 and 400.
Yeah, Hollywood's touches are high value, but he's not a high volume guy.
Yeah, and Scampers brings up in the chat that would be gross, and I'm gonna warn you right now, it is gonna be gross in Arizona. Dare I say, it might be gross for all 3 of the teams we've talked about today: Carolina, Houston, and Arizona. 3 teams that are all going to be picking inside the top 5 next year, probably. Maybe the Panthers have a chance not to.
Carolina could win that division.
Yeah, Carolina could win the division or finish in last. It's everything in between.
Yeah. I think they've got the best defense in that division, so I'll make them the preseason favorite in that division. But
they could. Atlanta's such an interesting team of what they could be.
Yeah, they're interesting.
Because they have so many defensive pieces.
Yeah. How do those pieces mesh is the question.
Exactly. Yeah. Maybe we get 2017 Bud Dupree or something, and we just all of a sudden the Falcons are the team to watch for. The new Vic Beasley I miss Vic Beasley. Anyway, those are the 3 teams we were talking about today. Well, let's talk about our weekly segment. We talk about our Do Better trades and our Do Better trade reviews. Always remember, be sure to comment any trades that you have that you want us to talk about. That's what we're here for. We want to help you guys out. And again, DM us it or add us on Twitter, and we'll be sure to bring it up on next week's show. We want to be talking about trades that you guys are talking about in the industry. We want to help you guys. We aren't talking to the void. So I know, Joel, you had a few that you wanted to bring up. I'll let you write them out here or speak them out.
Yeah, so after my hiatus to go see my family, it's been kind of active in the trade market this past week. So let me bring up my sheet here. First one we're going to talk about is, there we go. So 12 teams, Superflex, tight end premium, start 10, gave away Tony Pollard and Deebo Samuel for Jordan Love, Jahan Dotson, and Mike Williams. So this is a team that needs a quarterback. So went out and got Jordan Love. Tony Pollard and Deebo Samuel are both guys I'm willing to move. Deebo's value is kind of down. So if I can get kind of first round value for him, I'm willing to do it. I think people are kind of afraid of the injuries and afraid of the age and the target competition because that team's got a lot of, got a lot of mouths to feed with McCaffrey and Kittle, Brandon Ayuk. So if I can get that kind of value, Tony Pollard, people are high on him because Zeke's not there, but he's never carried the load, right? He's never been a volume running back. He's always been the high efficiency guy behind that volume guy. So he's a question, right? We don't know what he's going to look like in that offense with that role.
Can I tell you what he's going to look like? Oh, he's going to look like a top 5 fantasy running back. Oh my goodness, he is going to look so good, Joel. And the only thing holding him back would be health, and we'll see if he can carry that workload. Right. But we've asked that question before of other guys. We'll see. Either way, we know what we're getting while he's healthy. But keep going. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, so I mean that's the case. That's why I'm willing to sell him, is because there are people like you who are very high on him, higher than I am. It's not that I don't think he's going to be good. I expect him to be good. I just don't know if he has that elite ceiling, right? Because we've never seen volume and efficiency out of him. We've seen efficiency, we've never seen volume. So when he gets that volume, does the efficiency hold up? Mike McCarthy's talked about wanting to run the ball more. So how does he hold up? He's coming off a very serious injury. I expect him to be ready for training camp, but we just don't know what he's going to be. We don't know what his role is going to, how he's going to adapt to this new role.
I agree that he's probably a good sell right now because I do think Zeke is going to come back, and I think Zeke is going to be used too much. And in the very least, we know what Zeke is used for at this point, which is meaningless goal line touches where he won't score, but it will take away from someone else and will turn into a passing touchdown for Peyton Hendershot. And he'll be used for third down passing work where he's being a good blocker because he can still block at this point. He can also play center, albeit not as well as he can do as a third down.
I was going to say he can play center and get trucked, but that's all good.
Listen, that's the film you go back to and say, okay, we could have done a little bit differently. But we're going to talk with the 49ers at some point when we do that for the look inside. I have a lot of apprehension with all of the 49ers pieces short of Christian McCaffrey at current cost. I don't know who I trust Kyle Shanahan and all, but we're going into June and we have no idea. I think Brock Purdy will be the week 1 starter. Could easily be Trey Lance. It could be Sam Darnold if the other two aren't healthy yet. It's health, not talent. Although
fair. That's fair.
Maybe we had a comeback. Yeah, he had a decent run for a little bit in Carolina. Not really, but yeah, I get where you come from with that trade. I want to bring up another one here. It's a 12-team Superflex league. I'll pull it up on the screen right now. James Cook and Keenan Allen for a 2024 first.
So this is interesting. This was offered to me and I declined it. So this is a trade that I would make around Thanksgiving if I was a contender and wanted going into the playoffs and needed help. It's not a trade I want to make right now, just because there's too much uncertainty for me to be giving away my first. Like if I'm giving away a first, I want an elite asset, right? I want somebody that I know is going to be an elite player for multiple years. And I'm not getting that here, right? Keenan Allen we all love Keenan Allen. He's 31 now, 32, something like that. He's coming
I'll look it up, but I think you're right. It's 30 or 31.
I think he's 31. Yeah.
Keenan that's Keenan Thompson. No, Keenan Allen, please. I thought my Google cookies would know me well enough. He turned 31 on April 27th.
Okay. So yeah, I mean,
just newly turned 31. Happy belated, Keenan Allen.
Yeah. So he's a guy we all love, but last year he kind of tied Jackson Smith-Njigba for the worst hamstring injury of all time. Missed 6 weeks with a hamstring pull, and that's what happens with older players is the injuries become more frequent and they become more serious. It takes longer for them to come back. James Cook is, I think, someone that the kind of dynasty community is vastly overvaluing.
I completely agree. Oh my goodness, we're going. I'll let you get your rant off before I get mine.
Yeah, he was really efficient. He had some big plays, but he was never a guy who was going to be a full-time back or a full-time kind of bell cow back. So I think there's a real danger in trying to extrapolate, his performance into even any kind of volume increase, right? Even because Dameon Harris could just step in and be the exact same thing as Devin Singletary was last
Easily.
year. Yeah,
Easily. Dameon Harris is a good player as well. Like, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. He's probably a better player than Devin Singletary, to be honest. I mean, at least he's very similar. So, yeah, plus they brought in Dalton Kincaid. Be that as it may, I just don't think there's enough volume for James Cook to be an impact player. I like him as for what he is. Tony Pollard light. We were just talking about Tony Pollard. He's a guy who, when he gets touches, is probably going to do well with them, but he's never going to be a volume guy. He's not big enough. He doesn't have the size. He's not his brother.
And he doesn't play to his size either. And that's a very big part of it for me. He goes down so easily every time he is touched. And listen, he might be able to get open with a quick route and get that receiving work, but I just don't think he's good enough with contact. I think he has terrible contact balance, in my opinion, at least as a prospect he did. And I didn't really see anything to counter that. And I know people like him. I know I completely agree. He's just overvalued. You have Dameon Harris there. And there's also the small but real chance Dalvin Cook gets cut when post-June 1st happens, which is currently the trend it seems to be looking. Dalvin Cook reunites with his little brother down there and all of a sudden makes that even uglier. That's possible. That's not why I would be fading James Cook, but in the realm of this trade, I want to get back to that. I completely agree. If I'm moving my first, I need to either be knowing I'm a piece away from my title, or I know I'm getting someone that I'll have for the next 2 to 3 years in a good way. And both these guys Keenan Allen could retire next year. James Cook could be dust, or not dust, but could be a handcuff at best, or a 1B at best, honestly, as well. But
yeah, so this is a trade I'll make around Thanksgiving. If I'm I'm a definite playoff team, if I'm I think I need a piece or two to get over the top to get through the playoffs, then I would make that trade. I'm not making that trade in May. It's not even summer yet, for crying out loud.
Yeah, that it is not summer, although it feels that right now. But I want to talk about this other one. I think one that we are all too ready to slap the do better trade on. I think you know which one I'm pulling up on the screen here. Tank Dell and a 2024 third for DeAndre Hopkins.
So I got this
tilting.
Yeah, literally minutes after the news broke. It was probably about a half an hour after the news came down. I got this. This is in an FFPC league. Come on, right? Tank Dell is going to the third round of rookie drafts, about somewhere in that mid-third. Yeah. So this is basically 2/3 for DeAndre Hopkins. I don't care where DeAndre Hopkins ends up. He's better than that. So that's an immediate reject.
See, now these are the league. Like I'm going to caution everyone against offering trades like this, because there literally is a 0% chance that this is going to be accepted. And all it does is you're like, well, Joel, will you take the next 3 offers from this guy seriously?
No.
Yeah. And that's the repercussion of this. You're shooting yourself in the foot. And instead, it's not the lottery ticket maybe that you hope it is. It is a flat out 0% chance sort of him falling off a cliff and his hand landing on the button clicking accept. Like that's not.
I'll say I did counter this. I offered him Hopkins and a second for Christian Watson.
Oh, you gave him a real counter?
I gave him a legitimate counter. He turned it down, which is fine.
I would never do that. Oh my goodness, you're a much better person than I am. I am sending back Tank down to 2024 third and just taking Hopkins out of it and just doing a flat give me that. I could do that on sleeper. So
I'll give you that for a 5th.
Yeah. Whatever. Good for you for making that. What was it though? It was Christian Watson for Hopkins? I offered him Hopkins.
Yeah, I offered him Hopkins in a second for Christian Watson.
I'm not the biggest Christian Watson guy, but I might honestly rather have Hopkins in second, but I guess somewhat team dependent as well. If you're a younger team, you're not so sure where you're going to be, I'll take the younger piece.
Yeah, it's just I think Watson has an elite upside. We'll get to him when we do the Packer section. I think he's a legitimate breakout guy. And he's 23 instead of Hopkins is 30. So if I can move a second to shave 7 years off my wide receiver, I'll do that. I thought that was a pretty fair offer, more of a reasonable counter than he deserved, obviously.
100%. And again, I wouldn't. I don't think I've ever sent a real counter when someone offers me a really bad trade. But good for you, better person than I am. Let's talk about this one. Interesting. Darnell Mooney, 2023 209, a 2024 first, and a 2024 second for Jamar Chase. I have fairly strong feelings about this, but I'm curious
Yeah,
on your thoughts.
I almost threw my phone when I got this offer. Obviously, I have Jamar Chase and quickly declined. To me, this is the quintessential quarter and 3 nickels for a dollar bill. This is no way. There's nothing in here that interests me other than the 24 first. The rest is just pieces. Nowhere close to what it would take to get Jamar Chase. This did not get a counter.
Those are that is the feeling of that I had come over me. Now I'm curious. Was this more offensive to you or the other one? Because it sounds like this is more offensive to you, but the other one seemed to me a lot more lopsided.
Yeah, I'll say. I think these
are the questions we need to ask.
Yeah, because like Jamar Chase is an elite asset, right? It's a super flex. This is a super flex league. He's still a first round pick in a startup in a super flex, right?
Yes.
So you're giving me Darnell Mooney, who has no trade value right now, the 209, which is 2 seconds and a future first, right? That's not close to Jamar Chase's value. I mean, I could see the other one. It's a terrible offer, but if you were a total rebuilder, which that team isn't, I could see, and you like Tank Dell for some reason, I could see maybe being willing to move off of D-Hop. That's a terrible trade. I would never do it, but I could see where you might think about it. This is just, there's no way I'm giving up. I mean, how far down the receiver list would you have to go before you even considered something like this? Right. This is
tremendously far. I think
outside of that 24 first, there's nothing in this offer that has any value whatsoever.
Yeah.
And you're asking for a first round startup or a startup first round pick.
That's where I'm at as well. I want to throw out another deal that I got offered to me that I very quickly turned down. Patrick Mahomes and Jacoby Myers for Joe Burrow and Jalen Waddle. There's a 1 quarterback league. I emphasize again, a 1 quarterback league, which I had to quickly double check when I saw Patrick Mahomes in an offer to me. I have the Joe Burrow and Jalen Waddle side, of which, did I misspell Jalen Waddle or no?
No, you're good.
Is that Jalen? There's too many Jalen. There's Jalen Hyde's throwing me off on all the Jalens out there. But yeah, I very quickly turned this one down as well. And again, it was one of those deals that was like, listen, I'm a beer deep and I'm not taking this one. You know what I mean? Like, it's
especially even in Superflex, I don't think this is even an option.
I don't think so either, because we're talking about 2 guys.
There's just not enough difference between Mahomes and Burrow to make up the difference between Myers and Waddle. Because Myers is 0, right? He has no trade value whatsoever, unless and until Hunter Renfrow gets traded. He has no scoring value. Jalen Waddle's a top 10 dynasty receiver easily. Everybody loves Patrick Mahomes, even in 1 QB, but there's not. I mean, in 1 QB, you've got an elite quarterback. You don't need to go even higher, right? You're high enough on the ladder to change the light bulb. You don't need to get to the top rung.
Yeah, and that's why I never end up paying up for quarterbacks in 1 quarterback, honestly, at least to the top tier, because I'll just
as long as you've got an elite option, you don't need. Like I said, you're high enough on the ladder to change the bulb. You don't need to get to the top rung.
Yep, and I'll say it every chance I get. Kirk Cousins was a QB1 last year, and he is virtually undrafted.
Geno Smith was QB5.
Exactly. One other trade I got offered to me: Travis Etienne, Kenneth Walker, a 2024 second and a 2025 first, 1 quarterback league, for Bijan Robinson, Zay Flowers, and a 2024 first. This I quickly turned down on the Bijan Robinson side, but I talked to a couple of friends about it, and they were not as quick as I was. I'm curious about your take.
That offer wouldn't have been enough to get Bijan off of me by himself, let alone adding Flowers in the first. So
I think adding the first was insulting. Yeah.
Right.
I'm trading back a year to downgrade.
Right. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, the 2024 second, that's like, we talked about in the Chase, that doesn't have a whole lot of value. Kenneth Walker just lost his bell cow gig. Travis Etienne's a guy I'm trying to get out of where I can, because I think he's kind of peaked in value. So
I'm
going to sell wherever I can. So it's not a guy I want to be trading for, especially at the cost of Bijan. and Zay Flowers and a first. Yeah,
Yeah.
I wouldn't give any piece. I wouldn't give ETN or I wouldn't take ETN or Walker for the 24 first.
Really? You wouldn't
I mean,
take
both of them.
I
would.
might take Kenneth
Individually, I
Walker
would
for the 24 first. As much as I like Zach Charbonnet.
I would not. I would rather have the first.
In a one quarterback league.
Walker's value is way down, right? People are scared.
I agree.
People are scared of Charbonnet, vulturing work. So yeah, I think that first has more value. So yeah, I wouldn't. If you gave me ETN and Walker, I'd give you the first. I wouldn't take a first for. I wouldn't give a first for either of those two.
Yeah, I want to take a second to talk about Kenneth Walker because I'll be honest, this same person has offered me Kenneth Walker over and over again in recent weeks since the draft, and I have a feeling like I don't have Kenneth Walker anywhere, but I have a feeling that's unanimous for Kenneth Walker owners everywhere. What are you? Because I think right now is a very interesting buy window for Kenneth Walker as long as it's not being valued like he was before the draft. I feel like owners are panicking, and you might be able to take advantage of that, so it might be worth a flyer offer. Again, I would send a 2024 first for him if I'm a contender, and I would need a running back, but that's me. You wouldn't, but I think you could get. I think you should be able to get Kenneth Walker for that. And if we're talking, talent-wise, and the guy that was almost offensive rookie of the year,
right?
And we know that Pete Carroll can sometimes throw draft capital out the window. So it's a good offense. Kenneth Walker's a good player, and that's kind of where I'm still at.
Yeah, I agree. I think my opinion of him hasn't changed. I think the community's opinion.
That's what I'm pointing out.
Flip-flop. So yeah, I think you may be right. This may be an opportunity to buy. But like I say, I still wouldn't give the first for him because I think the first has more trade value than Walker does right now because the community is down on him as a whole. I was offered Walker straight up for Saquon Barkley. I'm not doing that. There's no way. So yeah, I think he is what he is, right? He's what he was last year. I think we talked the other week. I compare him kind of to Nick Chubb in that he's an excellent running back from scrimmage, but he's not a good catcher of the ball. He's not a good receiver. He's never going to have that. He's never going to have that massive upside that someone like Saquon Barkley does, who can be an elite receiver. So, yeah, I think he's going to guy who's now that especially now they brought in Charbonnet. He's in an offense where they will rotate the backs quite a bit. I think he's going to be a good player, but someone who's kind of frustrating to his fantasy managers.
That guy that could have finished as high as the RB5 on a week and could finish as low as the RB30, who will ultimately finish in that RB8 to 17 range probably.
And can he stay healthy, right? He had injuries just last year too.
Yep, and he wasn't a receiver in college, so expecting that to change seems a little bit foolhardy. And that was the big knock for him out of college. So I want to that is our show. I want to thank everybody for tuning in this week. We're going to be back next week, again, Sunday, 9:30 for the after party. Talk about 3 more teams on the Look Inside series at clubfantasy.com, at clubfantasyffl.com. Be sure to check that out on the site as the articles continue to drop. You can follow myself at Michael__Sicoli. Follow Joel here at the Joel Wirth, and of course, Club Fantasy FFL at Club Fantasy FFL on Twitter. That's where all our content is, so it's always important to check that out. Check it out so you're not the last one to it. So remember, everyone, I just want to quick before I sign off, I want to say, Joel, I always give you your final word for the show. Any final thoughts for our lovely viewers out there?
Happy Memorial Day. Have a good weekend. The weather's been great here in Northeast Ohio. Hopefully it sounds like it's been good over most of the country, so hopefully everyone has a good weekend and enjoy summer.
Here. Oh my goodness.
The best thing about Memorial Day is it means the start of summer, and we're only one season away from football starting.
Yep. Getting closer and closer. Barbecue away. Enjoy Memorial Day, everybody. And of course, remember, Dynasty is like a disco ball. Keep spinning year round. So join the club every Sunday at 9:30 Eastern right here with Club Fan.